Shockwaves hit the royal world. Prince Harry is furious after discovering Meghan Markle allegedly sold her priceless engagement ring online for $44,000. The ring, filled with Diana's diamonds and deep history, was more than jewelry. It was a symbol of love, legacy, and tradition. Now, its sale has left Harry devastated, enraged, and questioning everything. The tale began with a simple but dazzling symbol of love, a ring more valuable than carats or dollars, filled with the weight of history, feeling, and duty. Selected as an engagement ring by a prince promising a life of eternity to the woman he loved, this ring held the weight of centuries of royal lineage, the echo of family history, and the importance of a love story witnessed by the world and unfolded over years. If for most of us the ring represented a holy matrimony, an intimate connection proclaimed to the world in the statement of an engagement, for Meghan Markle, the darling of the tabloids, it became part of an unexpected and absurd story when the charming gift once exchanged by her dashing lover hit the online sale block for its worth of $44,000. The internet image of the ring, innocently posted in a digital listing, unleashed a chain of events that were beyond their wildest imagination. It was a moment that blurred the line between a private disappointment, a public spectacle, and media hysteria, the shock resonating both personally with Prince Harry and around the world. Before we go on, please show some love to the content, like, subscribe and turn on the notification for notification updates. Reactions immediately after this revelation vacillated between disbelief and dismay. Rumors and, of course, unfiltered thoughts erupted as quickly on social media. Individuals scrutinized every aspect. Why did Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, put the signet of her engagement up for sale? Was this a decision born of financial desperation or something more long-term? Maybe it was a bid for independence, an attempt to emerge from the past, or maybe it was a ploy to spark a reaction. Upon learning that the most significant symbol of their relationship, their beloved engagement ring, had been commodified and hawked openly in online auctions for serious sums, you can imagine how Prince Harry reacted to such news: disappointment. The elaborate band wasn't just a sparkly topper, it also had a special meaning, as the trio of diamonds held sentimental significance beyond their sparkle, with the center diamond representing the couple's connection to Botswana and the two flanking stones a nod to Princess Diana. The heartless public auction of that heartfelt token, unbeknownst to him or with his consent, pulled the rug from underneath Harry, blindsided him, as he had to struggle with a sense of betrayal and loss of trust, while realizing the value of their relationship being very little. And it's there, halfway through the tale, that the tension began to mount beyond the surprise and outrage, because it's there that all of the associated whys and what-ifs surrounding the sale really aired in public. Why now? Why so prominently? The press had long portrayed Meghan as a symbol of independence, someone who wanted to form her own path rather than subscribe to traditional royal expectations. Was this sale an extension of that narrative, a statement that she was free now from traditional expectations or responsibilities, or was it a more personal matter, an emotional reaction to private slights that she had been sitting on for months if not years? The speculation was unrelenting. Analysts studied the timing of the sale, connecting it to other events in the lives of Meghan and Harry, from their move to California to their tensions with the palace, as well as the stories and rumors about them, including how they may or may not deal with the media. Each was founded on a single, inescapable fact: all the hypotheses, no matter how wild, were based on the same single ingredient. The very act of selling the engagement ring created a paradigm shift in how their relationship was viewed. Public perception became a battleground as media scrambled to report on the developing story. Every headline was more screaming than the last, inspiring instant takes on social media and dividing the jury. Some accused Meghan of avarice, disloyalty, and disrespect to both the royal family and Harry. Others rallied to her defense, painting the sale as a bold assertion of self-determination in the face of public invasion and relentless media intrusion. Polls, comments, threads and viral posts told the story of a society captivated by scandal yet deeply split in its readings of it. What had begun as a distant love story played out in private had become an international spectacle, and the engagement ring had become both the cause and symbol of an escalating battle. But within the speculation and hysteria, a more complicated story was unfolding. This was as real as it gets, raw human emotions at their worst. The choice to sell a sentimentally charged engagement ring wasn't just a business transaction, it was a potent, if conscious or not, sign of identity control and independence. For Meghan, who has moved freely between the murky waters of celebrity, power, and personal autonomy, this was a moment of radical potential for a power grab, of course, but also something risky too. In choosing to sell the ring publicly, she not only defied popular opinion but she also put on the line the tenuous trust between her and her husband. What followed was quick and fierce, and was a much fuller picture of emotions than the shallow version that boiled down to an online sale. As the story unfolded, sources close to the couple provided a peek at the private fallout from a public gesture. Friends suggested Harry's anger had been supercharged with helplessness. The move was certainly one that couldn't be undone, something visible to the world that effectively reminded how when one's trust is broken in the public square, only so much good and eventually it's beyond repair. On the other hand, according to reports, Meghan's camp defended the move and said it was decision from a realist perspective and said that she should not be bashed because the ring had personal significance and that its sale shouldn't be blown out proportion. Even in this context, people could not but be affected by the emotional power of the statement. The weight of the ring, the emotional baggage it had in their public lives, made it difficult to see the sale as anything but momentous. In this moment, it's about the struggle to reconcile personal choices and public expectations in matters of love and grief, of self-determination and duty. The selling of the engagement ring is a turning point, where emotions were made to crash against the isthmus of public opinion unlike anything they've seen before. Viewers are left wondering not only why Meghan did it, and what Harry makes of it, if indeed she told him about it, but also what the wider implications are for relationships, trust, and the difficulties of living life in the spotlight. By giving readers a taste of what's to come, readers are invited to explore the tangled skein of here relationships, and the various causes and results that flow from this one act. From the first shock to the media circus, from the private agony Harry suffered to the behind-the-scenes conversations of the royal family, as well as the changing public mood, and the mystery buyer of the ring. The story is expected to be unpacked layer upon layer. It tells a tale of passion, leadership, legacy, but most of all, human complexity. Follow this story and see what sort of sights, twists and turns, and lessons will be discovered in another world where love, royalty, and your freedom cross paths in beautiful and blood-curdling ways. The story begins, the stage is set, and the band, a once positive symbol of loyalty and commitment, now marks the beginning of uncertainty, a catalyst for an incredible transformation that will challenge reality and stir emotions in ways you may never thought possible from what's to come in the next chapter of this tale. Every action, every response, and every whispered speculation will ultimately boil down to a deeper understanding of not just the meaning of this transaction, but what it reveals of the lives, decision-making, and emotions of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. It leaves the audience balanced precipitously on the edge, wanting to see what happens next, what the drama will look like, and how the two people at its core will negotiate love, betrayal, and the public scrutiny that comes with it. It started off innocuously, as it must have appeared to any casual onlooker while scrolling through social platforms and online marketplaces. While there are all the usual second-hand furniture, designer handbags, and rare trinkets, something else seemed to catch the eyes of a lot of people passing by. The image was crisp and a nice job a diamond gleamed. Description was simple: luxury engagement ring for sale, asking for $44,000. There was no name, no context provided, but for those in the know, the implications were huge. It wasn't just any old ring, this was Meghan Markle's engagement ring. a track inextricably linked to one of the world's most written about love stories in recent years. The initial impact was intense. Within minutes, the screenshots were ricocheting across Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Memes and commentary poured in, from disbelief to outrage. Others struggled to comprehend what they were seeing, doubting the post could possibly be authentic. Could it truly be hers? Was it a stunt, a lie designed to get more clicks and attention? Others, more in the know about the couple's history, immediately spotted the ring. The central diamond was said to have been taken from a mine in Botswana, and the other two stones, of a smaller size, came from the collection owned by Princess Diana. There was no uncertainty. This was the engagement ring that symbolized Meghan Markle's marriage to Prince Harry. A gesture of love that had once seemed out of reach for Prince Harry. The news came like a clap of thunder. Those close to him expressed a mixture of disbelief and anger, emotions that are difficult to traverse in the face of decades of royal tradition and intense media scrutiny. To the public, apparently mundane though it may have been to Harry, who likely viewed it as a form of financial stringency, was a much more significance as a vivid emblem not only of shared history and devotion but of private vows and private hopes honored albeit in vain. To me, the public and unabashed sale of the ring showed that trust had been violated far beyond a simple monetary sale. It turned into a story of betrayal, exposure, the vulnerability that comes with turning private lives into a public spectacle. Friends and relatives of Harry allegedly portrayed him as being emotionally upset. He had learned of the sale not through Meghan or any of her representatives but from the digital miasma of social media, where falsity travels at the same speed as truth. In backrooms late at night with trusted confidants, disbelief hung in the air. Witnesses have described a man who was wrestling with reconciling an action with deep personal emotions and coping with a sense of helplessness in the aftermath of a decision that was irreversible and very public. For Harry, it was a cruel irony that the emblem that should have united them had become a split, a source of public humiliation and private irritation. And at the same time, the public response was creating an uncontrollable storm. Online conversations became debating pits of argument. Some commentators called Meghan opportunistic, suggesting she had sold off a piece of history, a story, and a personal relationship for cash. Others interpreted it as symbolic, an act of independence, perhaps something more like a quiet statement breaking away from royal traditions and expectations. But no matter people felt about this, one matter was certain: the sale had transformed a treasured item into a topic of debate, conversation, and social media circus. I had no idea there was to that moment of personal autonomy, public opinion, and celebrity power. One will most certainly want to think about the ring in question, especially the diamond in the center. Prince Harry's was obtained from Botswana, the landscape of a place where he and the bride have spent meaningful time doing humanitarian work and finding themselves. The additional little diamonds taken from Princess Diana's collection added an even deeper layer of emotional meaning by combining Harry's family history, the setting of the engagement ring, with the hope for the future, the new twin-stone arrangement. The art and symbolism were all woven together, and the ring had a story of its own. Soaked through with history, memories, intentions, the thing this poster actually sold was so much more than the amount that anyone paid for it on the internet. It was all an unprecedented public statement, unavoidably witnessed and endlessly discussable. It got deeper, and the author told us more about the story. The news was dissected in all its angles, with pundits parsing the timing with regard to recent tensions between the couple and the palace, rumored discord regarding privacy and media control, and the larger issue of Meghan's career and financial independence. Headlines were written to elicit feelings, like royal heartbreak as Meghan sells engagement ring and Prince Harry stunned and Duchess of Sussex turns legacy into cash. And then there was the spin put on the speech, as reported, which further fanned the flames, swayed public opinion while piling emotional pressure on whatever the truth about Harry, NW, that is something no one can really predict. There are few meanings to the act of selling an engagement ring, especially one that holds great sentimental and historical value. If Meghan, who has been portrayed in the press as feisty and independent, was simply asserting herself or reclaiming what was hers, or just giving the finger to the royal machine and by extension public opinion, it makes a certain sense. One cannot overstate the emotional impact on Harry, or on the royal story as a whole. This action, which not only sets up another rift between the couple, also pointed out the difference between private life and the type of media attention they are subjected to with each compromise. The engagement ring sale goes beyond a simple partner transaction. It is representative of when private emotions meet public judgment under the scrutiny of a public eye. The ring was just a lens, of course, a window into questions about trust, love, independence, and what it means to expose our intimate acts to the world. This story shows how a tiny, glittering thing can carry the weight of history, emotion, and public opinion. Its passage from finger to face in online forums denotes some seismic changes in attitudes, relationships, and social discourse. That story sets the stage to delve into motivations, consequences, and the delicate, complex forces that shape Harry and Meghan's lives. Every look, every word, every official interaction is a part of a tale that combines personal emotions and a public drama. Separated from the intention behind its original presentation, the engagement ring reveals itself to be the storm cloud's early whisper, a trigger that will strip away the veneer of civility but also love, sex and humanity from behind the characters and resolve itself in a way that is both shocking and prophetic. The day the ad hit the online listings changed the storyline around Meghan Markle and Prince Harry overnight, for lots of people, at least, it would seem. Hopeful symbol of unity and coming together, and the union of two lives quickly twisted into news-making thing. Its glittering diamonds were now no longer tokens of love, but irritators. What caught the public eye most was not the ring's availability for purchase, but rather how it was presented with the utmost commonality on a digital storefront adorning a price of $44,000 that was displayed no differently than a fancy watch or olden furniture piece. This dichotomy, between an item of profound symbolic meaning and a commodity on sale for a price, triggered one of most incredible propaganda campaigns ever released on the public mind. But in recent memory, well, at first, there were many who thought the listing must be a prank. Surely not even Meghan Markle would let go of such a personal and iconic item, right? The images, however, showed another truth. In the clear images, the unique design of the ring is evident, featuring the main diamonds from Botswana and the surrounding ones from Princess Diana's own collection. All that need be written, all that could be told about the ring, only served to emphasize its authenticity. For those who had followed the couple's journey from the beginning, there was no mistaking it. It was the same ring that had drawn attention when Harry proposed, the ring that had been appraised in its many iterations on countless magazine covers as emblematic of the merging of a prince's heart and an actress's hand. And now here it was, up for auction to the highest bidder, stripped of its mystique, exposed as a thing that has a price. In no time after the photos were revealed, there was coverage by the world media, British tabloids, which have been critical of Meghan, have been in the vanguard. They were ready with their headlines: betrayal, opportunism, no respect for royal customs. In America, meanwhile, the narrative about the decision was told a little bit differently. Some took her striking out as a sign of royal independence, while others focused on what it meant for her marriage. Chat shows avidly discussed the subject, analyzing every angle. The sale was not only news, it turned into a sensational concoction of entertainment and controversy. Social media fueled the hoopla, with trending Twitter handles like #Ringgate, #RoyalSelloff, and #HarryHeartbreak picking up steam worldwide. Instagram influencers had mixed responses, with some casting Meghan as a money grubber, others displaying support for her move to break away from royal restrictions. On TikTok, users were left wondering the meaning of the event, with some digging into potential symbolism and other users creating memes to make light of the situation. In today's digital age, whereas much commentary is issued online as in print, the story was hard to miss. And even the most apathetic about matters royal had to confront the image of the ring and the furor that followed. The consequences for Harry were very personal and painful. There are reports that he only saw the images by reading his phone on a news alert, not from official sources. That hit him like a blast of emotions: disbelief, confusion, anger. In those early moments, friends would later reveal, he paced in silence, holding his phone, and shaking his head in disbelief. To Harry, the ring was not merely jewelry, but a part of his life, his family, his bond to his late mother. To publicly display it, for sale no less, was like reopening a gaping, bleeding hole to the world. Prosecution witnesses who were near him said that the mood at the home was tense, edgy, and full of emotion. The ensuing media storm did little to help matters either, with UK talk radio shows devoting hours of airtime to the story, on which callers expressed their fury or lack of understanding. The gossip machine spun into overdrive. Was this a sign that they were in financial trouble? Was Meghan asserting her independence? Or was it, as some speculated, a calculated effort to provoke Harry or reject her links to the royal family's heritage? Every theory under the sun was aired, all helping to build the public's excitement. The episode made me reflect on the very nature of marriage. What matters is the value of abandoning the ring that began it all. Does love survive when its most iconic symbol is not venerated but sold? The cultural importance inspired some industry experts with specialties in jewelry design and the history thereof to argue fans away, saying it was rare indeed that you see someone selling an engagement ring with such historical value all out in the open. Some compared it to previous sales of royal treasures, highlighting the scandalous and treacherous implications that had accompanied every one of those events. Tying the ring to Princess Diana elevated the emotional pitch, which is how a private sale suddenly became a world news event. It was a loss to see Diana's diamonds, which were more than just rocks, but also symbols of strength, kindness, and motherly love, and auctioned without their meaning being recognized. In the midst of the turmoil, Meghan has kept a stony silence, adding fuel to the fire. Paparazzi followed her around in California, sunglasses obscuring any expression at all. Analysts pored over her every movement, pondering whether her serene disposition was evidence of a calculated desire to let the storm roil through or simply indifference to the wreckage. Her silence had become something of a statement in and of itself, providing society with ceaseless opportunities for speculation. Meanwhile, Harry's more low-key reaction was also analyzed by the public eye. There were also widespread rumors of huge rows with Meghan, but nothing was ever confirmed. People close to Mr. Pecker said that he felt ambushed and humiliated by the media attention and that he even questioned the foundation of their relationship. Had he been reading her all wrong this whole time? Whether those rumors about the media making a mountain out of the molehill were true or not, we learn of a boy in the middle of a mess, the only thing he had left standing, he found torn down to pieces in front of him, using a disaster as an excuse. The engagement ring, which had once symbolized the fairy tale romance, was now a source of public criticism and personal torment. Sale was about much more than money. It sparked deep conversations on loyalty, independence, and the fine balance between the personal and public when it comes to relationships. In the unrelenting spotlight of the world stage, Meghan and Harry did not exist merely as a couple, they morphed into a mirror of societal values, judgments, and contradictions. In the light of the controversy then spreading its tentacles, it was clear that it was just the beginning of the end. The storm over the online sale of Meghan Markle's engagement ring hasn't just caused waves across media cycles, it erupted into a squall of outrage, disbelief, and high opinion pieces. What started as a single item quickly became a global phenomenon, dominating headlines, spreading like wildfire on social media, and prompting passionate debates in homes, businesses, and editorial meetings around the world. This was not just any celebrity scandal. It was a profound cultural inflection point that cut to the heart of questions of love, loyalty, honor, tradition and the costs and rewards of personal freedom. In a time of judgment of individuals for their private actions by millions around the world, the Twitter reaction was quick and visceral. The majority did not understand their selling the opulent memento-laden thief accomplice Queen Diana's diamond engagement ring, as it was viewed as traitorous. For them, Meghan's move wasn't just about giving up a brooch. Giving up that piece of jewelry represented giving up history, heritage, the sanctity of a vow. She was castigated by critics in televised debates, who said she was treating an unparalleled artifact in such a cavalier way. One pundit captured the sentiment by noting that when you sell an engagement ring that size, you aren't just selling a gem, you are purging a narrative. The phrase caught on, appealing to those who thought that Meghan had broken online decorum. The backlash was brutal, both on social media and in the press. Hashtags like #HarryDeservesBetter and #NotForSale were trending for days. Twitter saw heated exchanges where actuarial aspects of the controversial deal were discussed. One took the theme back a bit further to place Meghan's move the way it was seen, was one thing. It was nothing like the royal scandals of the dynastic past in context of modern custom. Others spread comical memes, making fun of the sale by juxtaposing the ring with reduced-price items on fake clearance shelves or in grocery store circulars. The biting and relentless humor revealed a collective public disbelief that was concealing an undercurrent of anger and sadness for some. And the sale represented the unraveling of a love story, a fairy tale melting in full public view. There were also supporters amid the criticism. There were others, however, who felt that Meghan had every right to sell the ring, interpreting the decision as an empowering one. They indicated that jewelry was just that, jewelry, and that it could be handled any way you wanted, despite the sentimental value attached. In particular, feminist pundits interpreted the sale as a statement of independence, a blow against the asphyxiating pressure of the demands of royal marriage. Why should Meghan have to carry Diana's memory? One columnist asked, pointing out that there was no escaping the constant comparison to Diana. This opposing viewpoint, though less common, was popular among those sympathetic to Meghan and her struggles. The split between critics and advocates widened as legacy media dug into the controversy. Scathing headlines appeared in tabloids in the UK. Daily paintings depict Meghan as cold and unappreciative. Angry talk radio shows roundly condemned Meghan, adding to the resentment of her perceived snub to the monarchy. But the American coverage was more varied, some outlets condemning Meghan, others applauding her strength and independence beyond royal expectations. Contrasting coverage in the media illustrated the different perspectives in the UK and the US. In the UK, Meghan was frequently demonized. In the US, she was occasionally portrayed as wronged heroine. Beyond those who worked in the media, there was a particularly interesting perspective from the general public. London street interviews revealed a sense of betrayal among monarchists, who were upset that the monarchy's decorum had been sullied by the sale. That ring was not only hers, one woman said through tears. It was Diana's, it was Harry's, and it was part of all our love stories. In Los Angeles, the reactions were more mixed. Some dismissed it as sensationalist tabloid gossip, while others commended Meghan for her courage and will to start a new chapter of her life. The story uncovered very different points of view when one man talked to a journalist, saying that it had taken courage. These contradictory perspectives served to emphasize how the reception of the narrative depended on one's cultural position, and thus, the levels of the narrative also got complicated. For Harry, the criticism was just another attack on his hurting soul. He'd been publicly humiliated before in his life, but this one of course was uncomfortably close and impossible to ignore. Of course, the ring was more than just a royal family heirloom. It represented something deeply personal, linked to his mother's memory and his hopes for the future. Seeing it mocked, argued over and belittled by hashtags had added insult to the pain of losing Diana in a new, excruciatingly public way. His inner circle revealed that during that time he went off all social media as he couldn't take the constant barrage of jokes and allegations. Instead, he fell back on a small group of friends, working through a sense of betrayal and pondering whether the sale was an indication of a more painful split developing in his marriage. As the frenzy continued to grow, PR gurus weighed in on what the blowback will mean for Meghan's public image. Many agreed that there were ripple effects, especially in Britain, where her popularity was always iffy. A public relations strategist noted that the sale could prove to be a defining public moment in Meghan's story, even greater than some of the charity work she's done. "That's the kind of story that sticks around," he said, predicting astutely, for it continued to dominate conversations weeks later, appearing in unrelated pieces and interviews. The royal family, though they remained officially silent, were not immune to the frenzy. Those with inside knowledge hinted at hushed discussions behind palace walls, where the sale was seen as the latest slight in a relationship that had been fraying for some time. King Charles was believed to see it as a repudiation not just of Harry but of the family's own traditions. William and Kate were delivered yet another blunt reminder of the chasm that now divides the Sussexes from the rest of the royal family. The palace's deafening silence said everything. By remaining silent, they just let the public narrative get completely out of hand, and Meghan and Harry had to take it on the chin. Late-night comedians cracked jokes about the situation, fashion magazines discussed the ethics of selling a piece that had been inherited, and financial experts pondered whether the $44,000 price could fairly reflect a ring's value. The story has grown beyond its original premise, becoming in part an examination of society's preoccupation with wealth, love, and the monarchy. The ring was no longer an accessory, it was a mirror held up to society's own consuming appetite for scandal and the craving for drama. Before the hysteria died down, however, the damage was done. Meghan's silent rebellion was read by some as strength and by others as arrogance. Harry's pain was evident, if seldom ventilated in public. The public was engaged, and the fault lines were deeper than ever. The engagement ring sale did more than just rewrite the story of Meghan and Harry's union. It reignited conversation around what marriage, tradition, and independence mean in this day and age. The backlash, which was to be expected, revealed the fragility of the duo's public persona. Once a cherished love story, now a battlefield of subtext. Both poles tightly clung to their truths. The fallout had left not just Meghan and Harry but the social fabric itself wounded, but still. When the dust had cleared, there were deep questions and residual tensions that left the world quite ready for the sequel to the drama that no one could stop watching. And when news broke of the engagement ring scandal, the world held their collective breath, waiting for any single word from Meghan Markle that would either make sense of the situation or bring clarity to it. However, prevention did not occur, and days turned to weeks without any official announcement, press release, or addressing of the issue. Meghan opted for muted silence in return. But silence, as history has demonstrated, can be many times more articulate than words. Meanwhile, as Meghan made public appearances during those months, experts and commentators and the public at large pored over every detail of her body language for clues about how she was faring. She first made headlines after the sale when she was photographed outside a wellness center in Montecito. She was in oversized sunglasses that obscured much of her face, dressed in a casual, but carefully considered outfit, looking at first glance like the perfect mix of trying and not trying at all. Though it looked like any other day out, for the more observationally minded, there were clues. The way she rocked, shoulders back, chin up a little more than usual. Some analysts saw in it a signal of strength, a small act of rebellion in the face of international condemnation. Others, on the other hand, noted the visible tension in the girl's jawline and her guarded posture, reading it as suggestiveness that bordered on being wary, or maybe even guilty. The way she held herself became a tabloid sensation of its own. TV programs had psychologists and body language experts analyzing everything that Meghan did. One analyst pointed out that she would touch her necklace when in public, an act that is usually considered to be a form of self-soothing in stressful situations. Another had focused on a polite but mitigated smile that rarely reached her eyes, a smile for when the world was watching, that refused to be anything more. Meghan walking, waving or sitting in a car were looped endlessly on screens. Every moment was analyzed, read into as a sign of her inner torment or instead her strength. And that failure to receive a direct reply only led to more conjecture. Had Meghan just directly addressed the matter, the dust-up might have been ended sooner. But her silence created a vacuum that was quickly filled by the media. Was her silence a deliberate tactic to let the frenzy die down by itself? Or was it motivated by apathy? Was she too wounded to speak out in her own defense, or simply waiting for the perfect moment to respond? Various theories circulated. Others argued that this was a shrewd maneuver on her part, as by not verbally acknowledging the narrative, she was effectively also maintaining control over it. Others saw her silence as a sign of arrogance, an unwillingness to acknowledge the seriousness of what was widely seen as betrayal of Harry and Diana's legacy. Harry's responses during this time lent weight to those who were calling out Meghan's silence. His deep-held anger became known to those close to him, not just with the incident, but with Meghan's decision not to publicly speak about it. He apparently advised her to issue some sort of statement to stem the blowback and to show the public that she's well aware of the emotional import of what went down. But Meghan stuck to her guns, claiming silence was the best policy. This difference of opinion exposed a more fundamental divide. Hostage to public perception, Harry, who had always known what the consequences of runaway scandal could be, was unwilling to capitulate to the Meghan who was clearly spoiling for a fight and didn't mind being a punching bag in the media. Meghan's silence was interpreted in different ways. In the British tabloids it was depicted as aloofness, recasting her as indifferent to Harry's pain and the indignation of the public who considered her treatment racist. In the US, however, it was consistently depicted in the media as a sign of strength, as testament to a woman who refused to succumb to pressure from the media or public censure. This split on interpretations reflected the larger cultural divide in how Meghan was received, villain in one narrative, hero in another. Either way, her silence was a story via an endless round of analysis and speculation. Some also highlighted the irony. The Meghan who had once spoken out about owning her story and her body was now quiet. Her detractors accused Clinton of hypocrisy. She talks the talk when it's convenient and walks away into silence when called to account. In answer to the criticism, some of her followers said that her silence was a demonstration of strength on her part, as opposed to being a puppet in an awful media-conducted circus. And it was a paradox that made the situation all the more intriguing, a facsimile of words that reached beyond, to the, now visual, presentation of herself that Meghan was making, which in its own way told its own story. And in another public outing she was seen leaving a restaurant with pals looking happy and laughing. The photos went viral on the internet. To some observers, they were proof that she was unmoved, going about her life the way she always had, undisturbed by the chaos she had inflicted on others. But she laughed through her teeth. Her laughter was forced, it was a mask to hide the anguish inside. Analyzers painstakingly compared new photos to older ones, assembling a fight scene or crime scene to decode her emotional state by the discrepancies in her stance, how she moved about, her facial expressions. At the same time, speculation abounded about her personal life. Certain sources said she had confided in her inner circle she felt misunderstood and that the ring was hers to do as she pleased with, denying the public the power to guide her in how her possessions are handled. Others said she was tired of constant comparisons with Diana, and of the weight of wearing her diamonds. Whether these reports were true or simply hearsay, they all seemed to compound the story of Meghan, the woman who had to fight to find her own voice between maintaining her agency and her public responsibility. Harry, meanwhile, gave his silence away. It said quite a lot. Insiders spoke about his increasing isolation, as he struggled over how to defend his wife, while not trampling on his mother's legacy. He'd had the ring fashioned in honor of Diana's memory, to join the legacy of his family. its possible sale and Meghan's denial to explain herself to him felt like a rejection of him as much as of his mother's. Memory. Close friends recalled times he would sit morosely staring at old photographs of Diana, being torn between sadness and impotent rage. All this has only amplified his suffering, which was compounded by the silence left in the vacuum of Meghan's silence, in which the public were encouraged to make up their own, for the most part, damning views of him as a man publicly humiliated. The fact that Meghan chose not to directly discuss the scandal shifted the narrative to her body language, behavior, and facial expressions. Every smile, every turn of the head, every dress she donned were picked over, turning her non-verbal behavior into a language of its own. Her silence provided her with a kind of power, but at the same time it occluded understanding, allowing her actions to be perpetually the subject of interpretation. In choosing not to explain, she protected herself and at the same time exposed herself. Her silence became a screen, upon which the world would project its desires, fears, and judgment. Some called it courage, others, cowardice. To Harry it was simply a wall. It left him isolated amid gossip and heartbreak, silence not bringing an end to the scandal but prolonging it. The story that followed spanned weeks, turning the sale of the ring from a simple exchange into a poignant tale for Prince Harry. The news of Meghan giving back her engagement ring struck him in a very intimate way. It cut right into the heart and soul of who he is, what he is, which way he faces in terms of loyalty, love. The ring represented not only an ornament, but also an anchor, holding him to his mother's memory and to the future he had intended to build. Meghan's public sale of the ring cut that vital link and he was floating in a storm of shame and sorrow. The days that followed, friends of his would talk of them as the darkest in his adult life, and of a monstrous strength, the first thing he had come to pride in himself, that had suddenly wobbled under the clear disclosure of betrayal. Harry and Meghan's relationship was a risky business from the outset. Despite the obvious intense public scrutiny, with the relentless press attention, his family's resistance, the inevitable comparisons to Diana, Harry still decided to be with Meghan. He clung to their love firmly enough to brush aside the world's disbelief, to step back from his royal duties and to establish a life for himself in America. The engagement ring was a testament to his infinite faith in the two of them, a physical embodiment of his moment of choosing love and not duty. Finding it for sale online broke his heart, he says, because it felt as if the symbol he had put so much into was being tossed aside, despite all the meaning that his creation had for him. Harry's initial response was shock and denial. For hours, he would stare at the images on his phone, wishing desperately they were fake. He called close friends and advisors, in need of reassurance and confirmation that the news was some kind of mistake or even a cruel joke. But as more evidence emerged, journalists confirming its authenticity, the listing spreading quickly, his surprise festered into rage. With set teeth and a white face, he went from room to room in silence. People around him chose their words carefully, fearful that a gesture of comfort might be interpreted as taking sides in a profoundly personal, and not necessarily political, dispute. He was not long in rage. That emotion quickly changed to a still more intense and penetrating feeling. In a dream I never wanted, and now they are selling off the rights to it. Harry, who has felt the sting of betrayal of the tabloids' portrayal of his mother, the hand that killed his mother in her final days and an institution that he once trusted over protocol, said. Yet, this betrayal cut deeper. It had come from within, from the one person he believed he could trust, the woman for whom he had renounced his birthright. Not only was the sale of the ring raising questions over Meghan's motives, but also to his own perceptions. Had he not seen her for what she was? Had he instinctively wanted to protect and stand by her and let his head rule his heart when it came to reality? These questions hounded him, kept him from sleeping, his eyes fixed to the ceiling. The weight of their choice crushed him, and even the people whom he surrounded himself with felt his mood change in an instant. His typical warmth grew cool, his laughter fake, and conversations awkward. He would think deeply about things and then go over them again in his head, especially the proposal. and he remembered proudly handing over the ring, explaining where the diamond was from, saying it also was in homage of his mother. Now that the ring and the flip had been reversed, reflecting on the moment was like picking at an old scab. It had returned to him everything he had sacrificed, his part, his family connections, his place, for someone who appeared to have found self-disgust an acceptable payment for his most heartfelt offering. Insiders have also reported to the paper on a particularly fraught evening, when Harry confronted Meghan over the sale. There are differing accounts of the specific words spoken, but witnesses recalled raised voices, accusations, and an emotional intensity that carried through the walls of their Montecito home. According to Harry, he asked her why she was selling the ring, why she picked such a public way, and why she didn't tell him before she did it. True to her reluctance to speak out in public, Meghan is said to have responded only with measured replies, insisting that the ring was hers and that she was free to do what she wanted with it. Although the answer was lawful, Harry was emotionally overcome by it. For him, the ring was not about the possession, but rather about the meaning, trust, and respect it symbolized. Over time, Harry was conspicuously going downhill not only in the eyes of his circle, but of the public, too. At functions, he appeared visibly stressed, an open man turned in on himself, his face masked by exhaustion. Cameras caught him looking away from Meghan during a public engagement, with a tight jaw and wandering eyes. Tabloids latched onto this transition, spreading tales of marital cord straining and frayed emotions. The pictures were worth 1,000 words, the face of someone fighting to keep his sense of himself together as the drivel about him spent itself in a fountain of disloyalty. In private, Harry shared with a handful of close friends. Some urged him to try therapy again, reminding him that it had made a huge difference in the past when he was grappling with grief and trauma. Some would simply listen, they were there in solidarity, reminding him that he wasn't alone in this. But Harry, insufferable as always, found it challenging to accept that talking about his issues could make everything better. There was too much pain and the betrayal was too deep. There were no words that could reverse that loss when the ring was turned into a mere transaction. The emotional chaos also exacted a physical price. Accounts from his close circle said he lost weight, skipped meals, and spent long hours alone working out. His cathartic process instead took the form of manic nights drifting into sleepless mornings, his mind circling endlessly on the scandal. Sometimes he would spend hours in silence staring at old pictures of Diana, the woman he sought to honor with the ring. The importance on which her diamonds should be disposed pressed upon him with nearly God-convincing weight, the intensity of which no one could rightly perceive. For Harry, it seemed that Meghan had not just rejected him, but his mother's legacy, too. The downward spiral of Harry had reached a stage where his loved ones were even apprehensive about his mental health. They feared that public shame, private disloyalty, unending scrutiny was too much for him to bear. However, despite the inner turmoil, actively appearing at events with the public, putting on a facade of being happy and small talk, slowly dying on the inside. His trusted friends could see the cracks beneath the facade. They noticed a man struggling to reconcile the love he had once held dear with the pain now weighing him down. This chapter focuses not only on Harry's own torment but also the general theme of betrayal. His fall parallels how one reacts when their faith is broken in the most dramatic sense. For Harry, this wasn't simply the loss of a physical possession, it was the loss of meaning, the shattering of a pledge, the collapse of a foundation. He had built his life on the scandal, increasing his misery by making it public to the world, turning his private fall into a public circus. But for all his public face, his rolled shoulders, his weary eyes, everyone knew the truth. A man who would be anything to hold on to a love he would never have even when the thing that was that love was cast away. His spiral is not his alone. It hits home for anyone who has ever felt the sting of a compromised trust, the weight of a shame, or the ache of something sacred made base. The deterioration of Harry's nothings takes us further down that spiral and will encourage a great deal of soul-searching. Can love withstand such a broken, and if not, what form does it take? Meghan's engagement ring sale seemed the Sun and Twitter worthy, but its outrage spread right to the heart of the royal palace, for which significance, real or imagined, is everything, and jewels are more than sentiment, their history. Meghan's choice was more than a personal preference, however, it was a challenge to tradition, image, and the delicate balancing act the monarchy has always done between its claims to universal adoration and its own potential for self-destruction. The royals, whose unspoken watchword is always discretion, are understood to have refused to issue an official statement, but in the corridors of the palace, the reaction was reported to be nothing short of volcanic. King Charles, himself the subject of a lifetime life in the public eye, was said to be furious. The ring was not just a family heirloom, it was a well-crafted sign that she was to blend the old and the new. By using Princess Diana's diamonds, Harry had woven Meghan into the tapestry of royal history. It was said that Charles approved of the move, even though he didn't approve of the marriage, believing the decision to sell off those same diamonds Diana had once worn but which were now being circulated on the open markets as an insult to her memory. Palace whispers suggested this is how Charles saw this, as part not just of an ongoing snub against the Princess of Wales, but also the institution itself. But his resentment was offset by his practicality as a king. He knew this public lecture to Meghan would only exacerbate the media frenzy. Instead, his response was limited to private admonitions and an order for the monarchy to seek further separation from the Sussexes. Prince William's reply was rumored to be equally fiery if more measured. William has long felt the burden of protecting Diana's legacy, often becoming its steward. When Harry proposed to Meghan with a ring that was set with their mother's diamonds, William graciously saw it as a beautiful way to remember their mother now that her spirit flowed between them in their broken family. It was as though the sale of those precious stones would be a betrayal of everything their mother stood for. William is said to have confronted Harry in heated telephone calls, asking how he could go through with such an act. Their already frayed relationship reached a new low when William lashed out at Harry for dishonoring their mother's memory, and Harry reacted with a combination of defensiveness and sorrow. What had been a fraternal bond born of collective grief now seemingly was irrevocably broken, with the deal on the ring just adding another layer of hurt on top of years of latent grudges. Kate Middleton's reply has been subtler, but to those in her inner circle, her position couldn't be clearer. She'd always known how important jewelry represented in the royal family. Meghan regularly donned heirloom pieces to represent tradition and continuity, but to others, she was showing a lack of reverence for the more fundamental values of the monarchy. She empathized with Harry's hurt and she backed William to the hilt, seeing the sale as an insult to Diana's memory. Privately critical, her public face was in contrast her inner emotional self. People close to her suggested worries that Meghan's response could forever shape how she is viewed in the court of public opinion. How the Queen Consort reacted, while sipping a cup of tea, Camilla, the Queen Consort herself, took this situation to a more disdain mixed with frustration, due to her experiences from all the constant scrutiny. Who understands the power of public opinion and the game of perceptions, Camilla saw the ring sale, and Meghan's silence, as hubris, as a disrespecting of tradition. Reportedly, Camilla was even more biting and unforgiving in private, because she believed, much as Diana tried to do from across the grave, that Meghan had defiled the institution in ways Diana never had. Camilla's sway probably cemented Charles's decision, quashing any hopes for a reconciliation with Meghan and Harry in the near term. The palace itself was an institution that was still reacting to the fallout, figuring out how to negotiate the monarchy's role in the middle of it all. Typically, in a tried-and-true stratagem of retaining a cool external silence, the royal family kept a public silence that, in the context of British constitutional tradition, is both a shield and a weapon. A picture of composure and dignity out in public, tempers still boiled up in private. The sale of the ring comes after further damage control efforts resulting from a series of challenges to the palace and patience within the institution wearing increasingly thin. Some extended royal family members who had taken issue with Meghan's royal approach said the sale confirmed their existing doubts. Private family discussions lamented gutter-snipe sales behavior, so unbecoming of a former duchess. Others implied that Meghan had not even, in fact, ever respected the family or its traditions and cast the fact that her presence had always been transactional and the sale of the ring, firm proof. Implicit in those feelings, though it was very rarely articulated so directly, was the depth of animus there was for Meghan within the royal family. The palace's silence was interpreted in various ways by the public. Royalists regarded it as dignified, not conceding any point to Meghan or her behavior. Critics saw it as weakness, and as a refusal to take responsibility for her actions, scapegoating family infractions. However, the palace's decision prompted wild speculation, and commentators speculated about what conversations were being had in private. A prominent feature in the family's reaction was the silent but palpable presence of Princess Diana, with her memory haunting every conversation and assessment. Women's History Month edition. Diana's jewelry wasn't just jewelry, it was her identity and humanity in a sea of royal formality. For her diamonds to be featured in an online listing was, for many, unthinkable. The brothers, once united in their determination to protect their mother's legacy, suddenly found themselves at odds with how that legacy had been managed. The loss of continuity was traumatic and painful, particularly to Harry, who was made to feel like a promise breaker. The monarchy's future is also addressed in the chapter. In a world where perception and tradition are intertwined, Meghan's actions set a precedent that shook the core beliefs. If royal jewelry could be viewed as ordinary possessions, what did that mean for the traditional royal practices? Worries emerged that the episode would tarnish the mystique of the monarchy, a family like many others, it seemed, caught up in dramas, properties and feuds. Selling the engagement ring was more than a personal betrayal between Meghan and Harry. It was a collective whack to the monarchy, opening old wounds and deepening fissures. To Charles, it was an affront to the crown, to William, a betrayal of their mother, at the hands of the woman he loved, and to Kate, a denial of tradition. Camilla personified arrogance, while the rest collectively showed a family united in their disdain for Meghan's conduct but divided in how to deal with the consequences. You would think their lack of approach is what made the scandal fester instead of just disappearing from the public's mind. It was a jarring testament to this fragile calculus of love, loyalty, and tradition. Amid the cold silence of the palace walls, a harsh reality reared its ugly head. They couldn't escape the fallout from Meghan's decision to wave goodbye to her engagement ring. It was not just a scandal in passing but a wound that would leave a mark on the royal family for years to come. Now, on the heels of Meghan Markle's decision to sell off her engagement ring, a glaring question has arisen: why, in the world, would someone like her, a former duchess who became a Hollywood star with a staggering array of deals, ever feel the need to convert something so sentimental into $44,000? But the amount of money was trivial for them given their wealth. This baffled analysts, infuriated monarchists, and stirred conjectures that there were hidden motives at play. Financial concerns had been hanging over Harry and Meghan since they left royal life. When they fled the UK, they had wanted to be financially independent and to break with royal funding. This announcement put the pressure on maintaining their extravagant life on their own. There was doubt about the profitability of these arrangements, even though they were signed with major companies. Skepticism swelled further as a cratered podcast deal with Spotify came crashing down preterm and as uncertainties around their Netflix arrangement proliferated. The sale of the ring was a sign of financial trouble beneath the surface. Critics argued that the act of selling an item full of sentimental value for a small amount suggested financial hardship and wasn't in line with the lives of luxury that had appeared in tabloids. A couple of financial whizzes tore apart their spending, queuing up differences in income and outflow. The sale added to the story of financial instability, highlighting a darker undercurrent behind the glimmering veneer of Montecito life. Thanks for watching. If you were shocked by this story, smash that like button, leave your thoughts in the comments, And don't forget to subscribe for more royal bombshells. Stay tuned, this is far from over.